Hello and welcome to another Webster report on this Sunday, the 20th of July 2025. And we seem to say it every week, but there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening in this country, there's a lot happening internationally, and there's a lot of links to what is going on and why it's going on, and who seems to be pushing these pieces on this big chessboard. We're looking down in our country now where protesters come up because yet another offence has been committed by an immigrant in a immigrant's hotel. And the people have had enough of it. It's happening a lot in Ireland, but the police have, been more aggressive to all these protesters. We've seen that these protesters were then bussed in, and they were Antifa protesters, and they were bussed in by, that's what they called them, buses, these police vans, bussed in, and they were ushered right up to this protest line, which has lit a fuse. So we can see what's going on in America as well. They're having immigration issues, they're rioting over there. This is all being fanned. These flames are being fanned. These countries are being set up for a civil war. Because how else can you look at it? We've got to be honest with what's going on. When we start joining these dots, it's the international is happening right at local levels now. So where do we draw a line with this? People have had enough, but they don't know what to do about it. The governments are the ones who are putting this into policy, where people can see a conspiracy theory not that long ago of migration replacement being a policy is now what we're seeing play out. And when we also look at what's going on with the economy, there's a couple of things I'm going to try and share on a clips on video where they're talking about what is going on with the finances of this country, and that it's a deliberate collapse to show that capitalism doesn't work, and you're going to get communism full on. And the demographics have changed so much. With people who have lived here all their lives are suddenly a minority in their own towns, in their own streets. There's a lot of isolation going on. When we've seen this happen in history, we've seen major changes in international alignments, and we've got to start discussing what's going on, because there's some significant stuff happening in areas that is biblical prophecy. And you won't find anywhere prophecies fulfilled more than what's in that book. So we've got to start opening this conversation. Everybody knows about demons and witchcraft and everything. And if you go back and find out what it's based on, it comes back to the same stuff. And it's got to come in the scriptures, because these are the oldest manuscripts that we've got, the oldest things that we can find out from the truth for ourselves, and not what we've been taught. Because as I say every week, work hard, pay your bills, what my mum's taught me, isn't the right thing to do in this society unless you don't want to succeed in it. And we've given the reins over to people who don't work for us. They don't work for themselves, they do as they're told. But we're seeing a lot of things that are being found. It's being issued back through media as well. We've seen it propagated for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. How long before we go, I think we might have to put our heads together and come up with something different. Anyway, without further ado, I'll introduce obviously Russ and Taylor, our American correspondent, Uni Backsister. We've got one missing tonight because Alex has gone off to, great climates. He's one for always travelling. He's gone over to the wrong side of the Pennines over there just for a bit of a break. He'll be coming back all refreshed and with some work that he's got on for a teaching course. So there's hopefully some really good changes going on there. So Russ, how's things with you, pal? What's happening over your side?
Oh, things are going good. you know me, just staying in the scriptures and, you know, doing my apologetic stuff on Facebook here and there. So, but yeah, looking into all the trouble that's going on with the migration riots, the immigration riots, and stuff like that, and it's definitely troublesome. Um, but you know, when the foundations of a nation starts to tremble, and you know, when people start getting outraged and head to the streets, it's up to us, the people of God, to remember who we are and where we stand. I mean, yeah, we're citizens of our country, and like we're stewards to the heritage handed to us by generations past. But we also have to remember that we're ambassadors to Christ, and we're called to speak the truth in love and protest without losing our peace. And that's something that I'd really like to drive home to all of the Christians listening. We're ambassadors of Christ. We're called to peace. We're called to not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So, you know, I just like driving that message home as things escalate, because it's going to continue getting bad, and it's just only going to get worse. I see it driving countries to break up civil wars, and that's something that we don't want at all. So
No, and Taylor, as you come in, I mean, we've had several discussions about Kissinger and Zabriskie and the grand chessboard that they spoke about in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and you're seeing it play out, aren't you?
Well, first of all, let me just say you said Zabrinsky. I don't know who Zabrinsky is.
Then they use, oh, Brzezinski.
You combine his first and last name.
Well, they're both the same, mate.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, all I can say is that that agenda is dead, and that what we're seeing play out right now is just the theater version of what was planned to play out. Just as I've said many times before, the whole thing is you got to show you can't tell the people, you have to show them. So you have to show them exactly just what the cabal was planning to do, and then what's it called, reenact it in a controlled manner in order to show people, because we're watching a movie. This whole thing is a movie. So at the end of the day, no matter what you see on the media, you know telling you it's all glim and all that stuff, and you're hearing about these riots and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not saying it's 100% fake, because obviously you need some semblance of reality in order to sell the illusion, as as the deep state would always do in the past. But the thing is that the way these riots work is that they get these operatives, these controlled operatives. They put in there to start something, and then what happens is that a bunch of these libtard idiots come around and try to join in on the fun and think that they're doing something, when in fact they're just playing into the hands of the people. They're playing into the movie, just like how the George Soros riots. That's how they would. It was exactly the same thing. They paid provocateurs, put them out there, start something, and then the normies come in and they fill it up. So it's the same playbook. It's just swapped around and done for the good now instead of for the evil.
Well, that's what Russ was talking about, where all these people they've been pushed to the brink, and they've now become into what is a desperate situation. In that situation, people will react emotionally, whereas when we're all put in these pressures, you'll all react, and this is like a massive psychological war, where they know that if they put people under the right set of pressures, right circumstances, you can make people cannibalistic within 2 weeks. They've done massive studies on these. But people can't see it because this creeping death has come up upon them. I have conversations now where we've got, I mean, tons of Turkish barbers. There's loads of, in my opinion, there might be a bit of money laundering going on through my town, because people have empty barbers shops most of the day, but they're immaculate. Cars are immaculate. You just don't know what's going on in your own town once upon a time. And that would never be, because everybody knew everybody. So I always tell the story when my nana came down to work, helped my mum out in the shop. and she caught the bus into town and then walked down. And she was so amazed that there was an actually black man in Lee, because nobody ever, they're not. It was one of those things. There was Asians, I went to school with Asians and that kids, but it was phenomenal to me, Nan. It was unreal, because when I witnessed that, I thought that's very strange for somebody to say something like that. So you see how much the demographic has changed in the towns. This is definitely targeted, because this is all about diversity. These policies have been going for a long time. You've done I'm sure you didn't you do a show on Agenda 21 2030, Taylor? Or am I getting you mixed up with someone else?
I've talked about that before, but I don't think I've done a dedicated show to it. You're probably thinking of somebody else.
Well, those plans are still what they believe they're going for. People over here at least were thinking that they'd thwarted something, or they managed to change something. But I think it's just out of, how can I put it? It's not out of people's hands as such. It's where they're going to get focused on. And this is where they start to distract, but they're now causing all these issues, and it causes this diversity that people can't unite, which will cause that unrest, won't it, Russ? You haven't got that peacemaker, and it's getting the peacemaker and going for what is actually causing this. And you've got to look at who's that feedback there? I think it's all right now. Might be my end. When you look at what's going on with the financial system and the pressures that are going on, they are primed to cause absolute chaos with answers that they've got. If their policy is zero carbon, we're made of that, and they're more than prepared to depopulate. We've spoke about the Deagle site before that predicted from 68 million, there's going to be 15 million by this year in the UK. In England, this is no small matter, because all those conspiracy theories that every people were talking about it from different angles, on all different kinds of levels. When you start to see the ones that were ridiculous, that you just, you knew straight away that it couldn't fit in with what the course of the mechanics of what was going on. So the information got sifted all over those years, and now when it's all happening, you can't sit there and think, well, I told you so, because this is, your family's involved in all this stuff now. These Pfizer documents about injecting cancer-causing stuff into people and then offering them assisted suicide. What's the difference to what anything we've ever heard about from Nuremberg on that kind of policy? And it's happening all over the shop. I think it's time people have got to get laser focus on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Jesus said in Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And us Christians, we're the children of God. We're the rogue element in every empire, every kingdom's design and their plan. They never account for the body of Christ. They never account for the Christian element, because when we come in, we overthrow kingdoms. We've overthrown empires, and we've done so without raising a single sword. And we do so with scripture, with testimony, with preaching, with songs and hymns, and that's how we should approach everything. And let's just be clear for a second. We must never fight darkness with more darkness. If we lose our temper, we lose our testimony. If we let rage rule our hearts, we surrender the cause to the enemy. Christians are called to resist evil, but never to become evil in the process. Vengeance belongs to God, not to us. And I'd like to share Romans 12:17-19 along with that. Paul wrote to us, recompense no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, let peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. So we don't approach this stuff with more evil. We can literally stop any plans that the world puts in our place, in our way, just by trusting in God, by preaching and proclaiming the gospel. Because we change hearts, we change minds, and once we start changing minds with the gospel and break out of the four walls of the church and just start preaching in the streets, we can change minds, we can change hearts, and that's the ultimate goal. That's the only thing that will stop any of this from happening or from continuing.
Well, it's got to come to some conclusion, and the way it's unfolding now. I mean, I've had some wonderful interactions. People are turning to Christ. I mean, one of the protests they were saying we're shouting we're a Christian country, and I've got very good friends who are Muslims who don't believe the same Islam as what these people are bringing over. Now, if we are to think that we're going to be a minority, we might not end up having a say. I mean, if the mayor of London can sit and just talk down to women who are asking him questions about rape gangs, and he's just ignoring what they're saying, and nobody's doing anything, it's like everything's changed. There is no, these are our employees that are telling us, that are imposing this on us. So you can see that the the capitalism has ushered in this socialist system, which if they go to the digital and the cashless society, then we're looking at real trouble. If they collapse the economy and that's the only thing you can do to feed your kids and have 10 minutes electric or whatever, I've never seen us in such a predicament in 53 years of my life. It was certainly about birds, booze, and football at one point. But when the thing actually comes and affects your life, where a system imposes something on you that shouldn't apply to you unless you actually ask for its service and subscribe into its service, but then they drag you into the service and go under a jurisdiction that doesn't apply to you. And all the system is corrupt. It's got attachments to everybody. I know people who can't just go off and live in the woods and live off the land. They've been put in to a position, as we've all been penned into these positions now. So it's almost like an open work camp. How long before it's a concentration camp? It is an island. We're going to struggle, but we can't stop dinghies coming in. But you bloody watch it if there's a digital system in where they say you can't travel because you've got everything within 15 minutes. Now, that was a conspiracy theory 10 years ago. That there'll be 15-minute cities, you won't need your car, everything will be supplied for you, just do as you're told. There's not going to be any jobs for you, and we'll just offer you to die. You can't write. What kind of a movie would this be? What rating would this get for mass genocide by democide through spiritual battles? That this is like all about what we have been taught. If I'd have been born into a really religious family, then I would have believed, because my parents would have taught me, that is the way to go. So if I now know that you've been born into a family that came from Mormons, from Islam, from JWs, from Judaism, from any religion, Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhism, whatever you want to apply, these people who bring you in and nurture you and teach you, you tend to go along with. That's why I know when I've had lads in jail who are worried what his mum would think because he's not had a good week and he's played up for staff, and he's please don't tell me mum. But yet he's a career criminal, and he was given permission from a young age to be able to do what you want, but let me know what you're doing and don't get caught. If your parents are teaching you that and they've been here longer, you tend to pick up, well, what is the facts? If you've not got the survival, you've got to find the survival. If you've not, I've seen it all in 15 years. Lads who have been virtually on their own from the age of 4 or 5, being brought up by a 7-year-old, and they learn how to survive. So unless they get access to something, or as in many cases that I did see, where they were desperate, they were on their knees, and I've seen some people say, "I know a better way now." People who have been talked down out of things, who suddenly read a Bible, or they even gone into Catholicism and stuff because they've found a better path. They know there's something there, and because it's written in our hearts and minds, we know that that's the way to go. It hasn't always been like that, but since what happened at the cross, everybody's got this ability to go and look, seek, and the rest will come to you. So as you were saying, Russ, about giving that belief and letting go of what you can do in this world, come into my rest, let it go, I'll sort it now. But you've got to get that belief. Well, go and look. There's so many people I've spoken to very recently that haven't read the Bible for themselves, but like myself, when I hadn't read it, I had opinions on it based on what I heard other people say about and what I'd read and what I'd learned at school. But I never really put much thought into it until there was nothing left for me to do apart from all these religions that I'd looked for. What happened after this life since my dad was killed? And I'd seen all these religions that couldn't agree with each other, some hated each other, but some all pointed to the Bible and said, most of them pointed to the Bible and said, yeah, Jesus is a good bloke. He was a man that became a god. He created planets, all this kind of stuff. They all agreed Jesus was all right, but none had agreed that he was God. So, and I thought, well, I've not read that, so how can I have an opinion? And when I'm reading the Old Testament, New Testament, and all I can see that the Word, which was God, became flesh. That's got to be Jesus. That's also the one who's coming in Isaiah. How can you not put that together from reading it for yourself? So logically it made sense. And all these liars that ran all these institutions that had taught me to work hard and pay my bills and taught my mum, all this stuff, all these lies that I'd built my life on, all said that this was wrong. And I thought, with all the bills of exchange stuff, I've not done my due diligence on this. How can I then say I know anything? I've got to, that would be, it's too prideful. It was humbling to think, why have I've got opinions. And it took me back to an early age. I've told a story before when my mum heard me use the term hypocrite and a remark to one of my mates. I was calling him, and in front of loads of people, she just said, "What does that word mean?" And I couldn't answer her because I'd just heard what it was, and it sounded horrid to say. And she knew I'd go and find a dictionary. And I found a dictionary, and she come into me after, and she just went, "Well," and I said, "Yeah, I shouldn't have used it there." And she said, "You should know what words you're using, Paul, because if you don't understand them, you'll get yourself in trouble." So I had opinions on things that I didn't really know about. So it was quite a humbling experience. And all I could understand from that simple message, Russ, was all you've got to do is believe. Leave it up to me, I'll bring you all the rest. But when you've been taught and when you've been brought up in a fight or flight mode, whatever level you're on, some are on fight or flight from birth and, it's always fight to survive. Others get to a very comfortable position and then crash dive and then end up on the knees. But it's that humbling experience and the amount of people I've got to speak to that they get. We talk about this term Christianity. When they talk about the Bible, I would say that's Christianity because Jesus says in that, right? But if we're then saying, well, I'm a Catholic and I believe in what the Catholic Church does, and it differs to what I see in the Bible, then that religion is not for me. So I don't associate the Bible with religion. It's about that relationship, and that's very personal. So it doesn't matter what somebody tells you what the Bible says if you don't go and read it with the question of does it mean this? And that's where you've got to sit. And it's very hard with all the noise that happens in this world. So I truly understand that wrestling. Have you got anything to add on this one, Taylor?
Not really.
Yeah, it's like having Alex on.
Oh yeah, so I can understand wrestling with the faith, and when you're brought up in a religion or a certain sect of Christianity, you tend to lean toward those beliefs until something strikes you and proves those beliefs, those fundamental beliefs, wrong. And usually, when that happens to people, they try to defend it to the best of their ability. I mean, I've broken down Greek and Hebrew to Jehovah's Witnesses, and they'll still deny it. Like I'll literally pull up old manuscripts and stuff. They still deny what's literally written plain in Scripture. But what really helps with me with what I've noticed is that when we're faced with like doctrinal or theological issues or questions about stuff, the best thing to do is start tracing back those doctrines and those beliefs. If we can follow the breadcrumb through history, we can literally trace back every doctrine, every belief to their originator. For example, the pre-tribulation rapture theology, you can easily trace that back to John Nelson Darby in the 1800s. Prior to Darby, not a single Christian taught or believed in a pre-tribulation rapture theology, but that was a newly created thing, and it was spread by the Schofield Reference Bible heavily in the United States. And of course, that doctrine has been publicized and politicized a whole lot in the United States with like the Left Behind books, the Left Behind movie series, rapture movies, documentaries, and all kinds of stuff. But what they really don't do is they don't really look at the scripture, look at the origin of the doctrine, and see where that came from. Because if you start tracing back doctrines, our goal is to believe basically what the apostles taught, right? That's the whole point of being reformed outside of the Catholic Church. We want to go back to that original source. We want to be sola scriptura. We want to do and practice and believe what the apostles taught directly, without any addition from future generations. So if we're going to do that, we have to start tracing back these doctrines and theologies that we're falling into, or that we were born into. And when we do that, we can literally trace back and get to that pure and undefiled gospel of Jesus Christ, which is Christ crucified. And once we do that, then we realize that everything else that's been heaped onto it, it's either stubble or it's gold. And the stubble will burn away, but the gold will be purified. So we just wait for that day when all of the works of man coming from the apostolic age all the way up to today, we just wait for that day of judgment when God will purge it with fire. And what's left standing is left standing. But we stand on the faith that Jesus Christ, Son of God, crucified, risen, resurrected, and ascended. That's the gospel. And if we stand on that, then we're good. So a lot of people would like to look at what is this, Romans 10:13, for whoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Amen. But that's where you tend to stop. They don't go on to the next verse. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be not sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. So we have to listen to the preachers. The preachers will preach. So when I go back, for example, in regards to Christian history and going back to our foundations, I'm going to open up the Westminster Confession of Faith. I just grabbed this one off my shelf real quick, but just to show you how concise some of the old classic theology is. This is chapter 2 of God and of the Holy Trinity. There is but one only living and true God, who is infinite in being and perfection, a most pure spirit, invisible, without body, parts, or passions, immutable, immense, eternal, incomprehensible, almighty, most wise, most holy, most free, most absolute, working all things according to the counsel of his own immutable and most righteous will, for his own glory, most loving, gracious, merciful, long suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, and rewarder of them that diligently seek him, and withal most just and terrible in his judgments, hating all sin, and who will by no means clear the guilty. God hath all life, glory, goodness, blessedness in and out of himself, and is alone and unto himself all sufficient, not standing in need of all any creature which he hath made, nor deriving any glory from them, but only manifesting his own glory in, by, unto, and upon them. He is the alone fountain of all being, of whom, through whom, and to whom are all things, and hath most sovereign dominion over them, to do by them, for them, or upon them whatsoever himself pleaseth. In his sight all things are open and manifest. His knowledge is infinite, infallible, and independent upon the creature. So as nothing is to him contingent or uncertain, he is most holy in all his counsels, in all his works, and in all his commands. To him is due from angels and men and every other creature whosoever worship, service, or obedience he is pleased to require of them. In the unity of the Godhead there be three persons, of one substance, power, and eternity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost. The Father is of none, neither begotten nor proceeding. The Son is eternally begotten of the Father. The Holy Ghost eternally proceeding from the Father and the Son. And this is a old book. This is Westminster Confession of Faith, and that's how they defined the Trinity. So this is the doctrine in which we all believe. God is eternal, omniscient, omnipotent. There's nothing above him, nothing before him, and nothing after him. He is eternal. And then there's the God the Son, who is eternally begotten of the Father. And then there's God the Holy Spirit, which eternally proceedeth forth from God the Father and God the Son.
And the Son became flesh,
Yep.
who died and resurrected and created the doorway straight to heaven and sent the Holy Spirit to be within everybody. All we've got to do is search. All we've got to do is get to that point. And the only way I could see me doing that was if I went and, read that book for myself, read those scriptures, read the other extra canonical stuff, all the information. I couldn't get enough of it because it made them so much sense compared to the institutions, the establishments, the bloodline links that I was researching Nephilim bloody 20 years ago, not even connecting it with anything to do with the Bible because, you've got Anunnakis and aliens and all that. You're sifting through all that information throughout your life because all of a sudden you had access to all the information. So why would you not want to take all the information in before you made a decision? Because I tend to try and do that, but I haven't done it all through my life. And when we get to a point where we're going to react, I mean, we bring it back to this world with what's going on, the provocations that are going on. There comes a lot of destruction that comes with that. Well, from that destruction, it's got to be rebuilt. So there's contracts for the boys for building and changing infrastructures, but they're causing, untold suffering. So you can feel that whatever's coming into play now is playing this plan. All this migration, you've got Islam and Zionism who are clashing like mad over in Israel. You've got in Nigeria, you've got Islam and Christianity having Attacks everywhere. You've got it going on in Syria. You've got it going on in all these other countries. You can see that nobody mentions that there's a few Christians that are getting a bit persecuted here. But we had a Welsh choir boy that murdered 2 kids. What's going on? All this stuff's happening, but we're being taught a narrative, and it's quite powerful because mention movies. When you look at a film like Total Recall on the second version with Colin Farrell, they're being told that there's this war going on that's not really going on. It's all this facade, and you've got to be honest that if you've never left your county very much, or this country, you've got to think of where you're getting your information. And there's a narrative that is absolutely being shoved. There are mouthpieces everywhere. We look at the BBC, we can see they're blatant with it. They don't care. They'll genuinely talk about rubbish. We end up going to Supreme Court for things that they debate and talk about on morning shows and afternoon shows. Yes, of course, a man can get pregnant. I don't know how we ever got to that point, but it's where we're at. Let me just have a see if this will play. Let us know if this sounds all right, guys.
Okay.
It's a clip from a Peter McCormack interview with Lord Blockton. Here's what he's got to say about the Labour Party. This is extremely poignant.
Rachel Reeves, even though she's what we call in Yorkshire thick as two short planks, the fact is, she knows perfectly well that if you tax the non-dons to force them overseas and force all the billionaires and millionaires and all their companies with them overseas, that is going to lose you revenue. She knew that when she taxed the private schools, that would mean all the private school kids are going to have to come into the public schools, and she was going to lose revenue on it. She didn't care, because it's all about destroy, 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 kill, kill, kill. That's what communism is all about. They know what they're doing. They are working with hostile actors and foreign regimes that do not wish us well. Because the Labour Party does not wish this country well, they wish to destroy us. Until you understand that, you understand nothing. That's the trouble we're facing here. They really mean us harm. They're trying to make the budget even more unbalanced until the whole system collapses, because it's only when they can force it to collapse that they will then say that capitalism has failed and we must now have communism ready to the floor. And I can tell you, if you're the working people of this country, if they get away with that, you will not like it. You will suffer first and worst, because those who are rich enough and smart enough to see it coming will have got out with as much of their wealth as they can before it happens. But you won't be given that luxury. You will be trapped here in the misery that is communism. And that is what we face unless we can persuade the Labour Party to stop being communist. Good luck. And that's not easy. They're so wedded to the destruction of this country. But we have been tame in not saying this. We have kind of almost assumed that they are a legitimate political party just like the rest of us, and they all mean well. They don't mean well. They mean this country harm. They have an ideology that comes well before any mere individual comrade or citizen.
That's quite a bit to take in, isn't it? So, how does that fit into this, or does it fit in? Should I say, Taylor, to the plan, where it's looking like England is going full blown communism? They're actually looking like they're going to go for it.
Well, it's like I said underneath. It's like what I talked about with the Biden stuff. The whole thing is that you have to show people exactly just how demented these people are. And then when they're ready for the big revelations, it's going to hit that much harder, and people will care more, because otherwise people will just go about their day and just not give a damn. But you got to expose these people by having them. Let me put it this way. Actually, let me ask you this: would you say that these people in the UK, would you say they remind you of, say, the AOCs and the Zoran Mondamis of here in America, in your personal opinion?
Does we've definitely got people with who lack brain capacity like AOC, but yeah, it's very similar, mate. That's what I'm saying. Our
Yeah,
government system mirrors yours, and we've got
yeah.
our players. Your Trump is our Farage. That's how it's being built. But is that falling apart? We don't know. We have to wait and see. But you're right in what you're saying. People have got to be shook to the point where, hey, it gets people's attention. You know, when you, like I say, when I went into this system, it does something to you because you find out the truth of how this system works, and it's very hard to go back to something when you know it's bad for you and you shouldn't be doing it, but you're going to get punished more for not doing as you're told. You realise that you're not in that free situation. There's a hypnosis that's snapped out of you, and when you tell your nearest and dearest what's actually going on, they think you've gone bonkers because that's how indoctrinated we are into these systems. Yeah, this is all there is. So go on, sorry, Taylor, carry on.
So basically, these people. Hold on a second. Okay, whatever. Okay, um, so the thing about this is, right.
She's turning your Wi-Fi off.
No, I just opened a window a little bit. That's all. But so the purpose of these people like AOC, Zoran Mandami, Keir Starmer, all these people is, well, we know, people like us, we know that these liberals, these Democrats, or whatever your equivalent is, like these establishment people, they have been hardcore communists for decades, and they have been slowly trying to implement their agenda one step at a time over the course of the last several decades.
Yeah,
But Eisenhower, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George Bush, etc., etc. But the thing is that they would always have this sort of like moderate tone to them, which is how they would get elected, right? Or part of the reason they would get elected. And we're not counting voter fraud and all that stuff. But they would have that image of being a moderate, and so basically they wouldn't wear their communism on their sleeve, essentially. And then when they get into office, that's when they implement all of the big agendas, all the big communist agendas. Like say for example, um, Bill Clinton, when he got in, he won in part of the reason he won in 93 and 94 was because of the fact that he was a he appealed to he tried to appeal to Southern Democrats and Republicans by holding a Bible and saying all this stuff. But when he got into office, he implemented NAFTA and all this other crazy communist garbage. But then what happens is that after a year or two, people the normies are going to norm. They end up forgetting and just moving on, and then by the time the next election cycle comes around, after all this stuff has been implemented, that's when they start looking like they're moderate again. So that's how they would work. As soon as they would get in, they would implement their agendas. Then whenever an election's coming around, they would always make themselves look good by, let's say, going out into rallies and making them so, and saying, oh, we have to follow God and Jesus Christ, we need to believe in the Bible, or I believe in protecting the children and all that stuff, all the good sappy stuff that you'd want to hear. But what happens with recent years with people like the AOCs and the Zoran Madamis and the Keir Starmers and all that stuff, is that these people wear their communism on their sleeve, and they make it, and they don't conceal it. The hardcore radicalism is there for everybody to see. And as you know, Bill Clinton's mentor, I forget his name, the one who wrote Rules for Radicals, who said, put on a suit, cut your hair, shave your beard, and get into politics and implement your agenda after you make yourself look good.
Carol Quigley.
Carol Quigley, yeah,
That's it.
the Satanist, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been their agenda for them. That's been their mentor. That's been their Bible basically for the last half a century, the last several decades.
But do you not see being a Satanist? That's exactly what they are promoting. That's the line. They're saying, look at where we are. Look at the positions that we're in. You don't know what we're doing. And they've done it right in front of people. How are people not seeing it?
Well, again, the way that they do it is that they first of all, they when they took the Bible out of schools and they took any form of theology out of schools, that made people blind to these things as well. That's part of the reason they did it, because if people don't know, they won't see it, right?
I know a teacher, Taylor. I know a teacher who worked at a Christian school, and the board of governors voted to not teach more about Jesus because they did multi-faith. That is what's going on in happened in our education system. I was taught scripture. It was called scripture at junior school. I went to high school and it would become religious education, but it was still never. I mean, I knew about Islam, I knew about other religions, but it was always taught about Jesus in every lesson. But somehow that changed, and you're right. That started to happen right in the middle, like 60s into the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. That was part of the agenda. Here in America, it happened with Eisenhower when he killed the Republican Party, and when the Supreme Court head justice very mysteriously and very suspiciously died suddenly. I say dig him up, see if he was poisoned. But anyway, then who do you appoint as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? Earl Warren. You know Earl Warren, right? I assume.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was. Earl Warren was one of the key guys at the 1952 Republican Convention that helped to throw the convention to Eisenhower when it was supposed to go to the conservative Robert Taft.
Wow.
Yeah, he was one of those people, and of course, Earl. So Earl Warren became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and of course, as we know, over the following few decades, he implemented hardcore communist agendas to the point of where it pretty much killed the justice system, and any communist subversion from then on was pretty much said, oh no, we can't go after these people because it would be mean. They have a right to free speech, all this and all this other crap that they would say. And then, of course, after Earl Warren, then we get the Watergate babies, because when they had that deep state coup to get rid of Richard Nixon because they hated him, they implemented Gerald Ford, their puppet, on the Warren Commission. Also, Earl Warren Commission. It's named after Earl Warren. So, yeah, these people, they're all in the same club. And what happens was that Earl Warren's Supreme Court was the one which Eisenhower created. It was the one responsible for taking God and the Bible out of schools in '63 here in America. And that ended up, of course, facilitating a lot of this crap, because what happened around the same time, you had the hippie movement that sprung out of the anti-war movement that it was hijacked in the mid to late '60s under LBJ, a close personal friend of Eisenhower, by the way. LBJ was head of the Democrats in the Senate. He was Senate's minority leader, and then when the Democrats took back the Senate in '54, they Eisenhower LBJ became the House Majority Leader. He killed the McCarthy hearings, which was exposing the communists and the globalists. And then what happens with LBJ? Oh well, he ends up being forced upon Kennedy, and then after Kennedy's assassinated, he ends up becoming president. And of course, we know what happened after that.
Well, if you take it from there, at that point, if you take it from there that the Bush bloodline got control, that satanic bloodline, the one that the one that was with Reagan, the one that brought Clinton in, who you just said followed Quigley.
Yeah,
So you see that bloodline taking control of the governorship of America. And when you talk about the new golden age, the new America, the new Babylon, the new Atlantis, this is what was being talked about with Francis Bacon back in the day. They all talked about this transfer of power. So you're talking that this satanic bloodline, because that's what Trump is literally what you're saying, because Biden was, if you compare it to ours, we've gone along the same timeline because you got Clinton, we got Blair at the same time. So,
I
and
thought you got Tony. I thought you got John Major at that time.
was Clinton not? When did Clinton step up down?
He stepped down in 2001.
Yeah, we had Tony Blair coming after Major, New Labour. So Thatcher's greatest achievement, she said, was New Labour. So she'd ushered that empire in. She ushered that line in over here. So that communist bloodline the seed was sown. You know, and people were voting for Labour because my dad did, Taylor. So this was all taught things. This was why it was so pertinent to me that I had to unravel and go through all my memories for what I'd built my life on, what all my morals, what they all based on. And you realise the quicksand of what this world you built on. And it was because good people, what loved you, taught you that because that's what they were taught. So it opens up all these questions. So if you're going from that going into the 70s, you
Yeah.
can see all the entertainment industry changed. All that changed the social culture of everything worldwide. All of a sudden, you saw all the morals drop, and
Yeah, exactly.
we had the
There are studies done. There were studies done.
you had the Kinsey Foundation doing their bit. We had the paedophile information exchange trying to become a party to get governorship so they could lower the age to 10 in 1980. You know, we've been bombarded here, boys. We've been battered for a long time.
And by the way, speaking of the 70s, back to what I was saying. So, like I said, the deep state did their Watergate coup to get rid of Nixon because of them. And the interesting thing is, Nixon won in 1972, 49 out of 50 states. The only state he didn't win was Massachusetts. George McGovern didn't even win his own state. So, what happens then? So they bring up so the media creates this nonsensical scandal for his vice president, Spiro Agnew, solid, good man, anti-communist, America first. They got rid of him through some nonsensical tax evasion scandal. And then what happens a year after that? Watergate. Who's forced upon Nixon as his vice president, as his new vice president? Gerald Ford, Warren Commission, Rockefeller Trilateral Commission, Rockefeller agent. What happens in '74? Nixon is forced to step down, and Gerald Ford becomes president. Who does? And by the way, Nixon, he appointed his own dude at as head of the CIA.
We joined Europe. We joined the EEC in that year.
Interesting. But yeah, so Nixon put his own dude as head of the CIA, a good a decent guy, not perfect but decent guy. When he's forced to resign, what does Gerald Ford do? He immediately appoints a new head of the CIA. Who was that? George Herbert Walker Bush. Yeah. Who does Gerald Ford appoint as his vice president? Nelson Rockefeller. These people are. It's a nice, big, happy family, isn't it?
Do you remember what Aaron Russo said about his meeting with Nick Rockefeller? That what they wanted to do was put chips into everybody and go digital.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I should also mention Nelson Rockefeller, one of the 5 famous Rockefeller sons. His maternal grandfather was Nelson Aldrich, the writer of the original Federal Reserve Bill, and the head of whose railway car they used for the Jekyll Island meeting. That's his maternal grandfather. So there you go. What happens? What happens with Ford? So Nelson Rockefeller wants to be president really bad, right? Because his whole life he wanted to be president. He could never get past the primaries because he was such a hardcore globalist. The Republicans would never elect him. So what happens? He's just one. If I was Gerald Ford, I would step up my security. What happens in 1975? A Charles Manson girl shoots him. Comes within inches of taking his head. What happens 2 weeks later? Another girl, Squeaky Fromm, shoots him.
What year are we in?
1975. Gerald Ford was almost killed twice in 2 weeks, back to back, in 1975.
Somebody didn't like him.
Because he was Ford was one of their people. He was a loyal soldier, but he was expendable. As you know, these people are willing to are willing to sacrifice some of their own for the higher agenda. Nelson Rockefeller.
Ritual, mate. It's a ritual.
Yeah, but also Nelson Rockefeller, he wanted to be president. And it's interesting, when Ford ran on his own ticket in 1976, he dropped Nelson Rockefeller as from the ticket.
Oh dear.
I don't blame him. and then that's how we get Jimmy Carter. And then of course you should know, I'm sure you're aware of what that led to.
Well, not long after Ronald Reagan got shot at, didn't he? A couple of times.
Here's the thing about Reagan. I actually like Reagan as a person, but the thing about Reagan was,
he's an actor, don't you?
Yeah. He was it's kind of like Trump in a lot of ways. He had some good ass speeches about the end. For anti-communism, going back to the 60s and 50s, he had some good stuff. But the thing about that is that, number one, George Bush was forced upon him. Nancy Reagan, after the shooting, his wife Nancy Reagan, she knew that he was in on it. And what the thing about that shooting, what it did was it succeeded in neutering Reagan. And it showed him, just like they did to Queen Victoria back in the 1800s, they pretty much put him in a position where you do as you're told, and if you don't, you're going to get shot again, and this time for real. So that's what happened. And so Reagan didn't even run his own presidency. That was George Bush and those other deep state people. They used his name in order to get their agenda done. Iran-Contra. So even you can have a good man in the White House, but at the end of the day, the agenda can still go forward with or without his approval. It just depends on who the man is, and it just depends on how they're able to whittle him down. And then, of course, George Bush gets what he wants in 1988. He becomes president. He implements so many communist agendas, of course, including...
Well, he had a real chance of this new world order, September 11th, 1990.
Yeah, and that's not the only time he said that, too. He said that many other times.
Many. So, and we had our Prime Minister saying the same thing at the same time.
Wow, who was it, John Major?
No, it's Labour. Labour agreed with everything he said. It wasn't just John Major. Every party that was ever there, everybody agreed with all of that order. We all we all still had our own internal politics, but internationally it was all agreed upon this.
Oh, of course, yeah, because by that time the deep state pretty much had complete control of the world at that point. I mean, they killed the Soviet Union, which is what they were trying to do for decades, and Russia was on its ass. Russia in the 90s was almost under Yeltsin was almost as bad as Weimar Germany. It was hell. And then, of course, Mr. Putin comes along and saves the day. But that's another story. So, um, and then of course, so I could name several things off the top of my head that HW did while he was in there. First of all, of course, there was the Iraq War, the Gulf War, which, by the way, I will say this, by the way,
The first one.
yeah, the first one, yeah. To Bush's credit, and I can't believe I'm saying that. To Bush's credit, he was ordered by his handlers to go all the way to what's the capital of Iraq?
Baghdad.
Yeah, he was ordered to go all the way to Baghdad and take care of Saddam Hussein. He said no. And instead, what he wanted was a slow starvation takedown of Iraq rather than a full frontal assault. Because as you know, I'm sure, and I've talked about this before, there's different factions to the New World Order cabal. There's the hardcore globalist Marxist faction. So your Lenin Trotsky types who just want a global New World Order and want hardcore communism worldwide, of course. But they're willing to do things slowly and methodically. Then you have the hardcore Zionists, those ones who want to implement everything right now. They have no patience, get things done right now, go to war. And that's actually one of the things that took down Bush, and actually would come to bite Clinton in the ass when he was in there. By the way, I'm sure you remember this. The when he tried to negotiate peace between Israel and Egypt in his second term. I forget who the Sadat was. That was a leader of Egypt, I believe, and then I forget who the prime minister of Israel was at the time. They were trying to the globalists were trying to broker a deal between Israel and Egypt just so they can satisfy and neuter that region of the world, because the globalists, the George Soros types, they hate Israel with a passion.
They've been fighting forever around that region.
Yeah, because what it does is, and even the hardcore globalists of back in the day, they were not in favor of the state of Israel. FDR, Eisenhower, these George Marshall, these people were not in favor of Israel because not because they gave a shit about the Palestinian people, of course, but because it's such a big headache. And what it does is it makes the Arab regions hostile to the New World Order, because they know that Israel is a big part of it, and if Israel is there trying to mess things up and cause constant conflict, the Arab leaders can't get their people on board. So it causes a big headache, and that's why the globalists for decades have been trying to neuter that region. Jimmy Carter tried doing the same thing, and that's what got him voted and kicked out of office in 1980. They gave him the Iran hostage crisis to kill his presidency. And then what did they do to Clinton? So they kill. So the prime minister of Israel gets assassinated by a Zionist Jew, of course. Sadat gets murdered as well. And then what happens? And then what does Clinton get for his troubles of trying to broker peace in the region? He gets Monica Lewinsky.
I knew he was going to say that.
Yeah, Monica Lewinsky is a Mossad agent. Her handlers and all those people in the media that pushed that story were all CIA Mossad AIPAC people. So they killed Clinton's reputation with that because he tried to defy the Zionists. It's a crazy story.
So Taylor, quick question then: are the Zionists in control of your government now, or has Trump taken that over?
No, Trump, or rather, I should say, the Q operation, the military white hat operation, has killed both the globalists and the Zionist project. And I've talked about these things, and I've talked about how before, whether it be the Epstein Island, whether it be taking down Epstein Island, saving Assad in Syria, taking down, fracturing AIPAC and the ADL, etc., etc. The globalists, he took down the neocons. He exposed all of these rhino Republicans, the John McCain types. It goes on and on and on. But the
So
thing,
how does he manoeuvre now then, with what has occurred this week in Syria, where these attacks on the Syrian people are happening from internal? You said there's a bombing in Damascus. I don't know if that's this ISIS-led government that's doing that, or there was other bombings that you said could have been fake without, but an origin from somewhere type thing. So we see movement coming in these areas that we're told that when there's a bubble in here, we need to look. We need to look here. We're going to have signs. So we can see you are talking naturally because you've got an articulate mind that grabs onto information and joins those dots. And you can see that these bloodlines that we talk about biblically, these are the same bloodlines from the fall of humanity, from as in the days of Noah and beyond. This has always been the same thing. It's always been one world. I was talking to Alex the other day where there was a big thing that happened at the Tower of Babel where not only were all the nations separated, the languages were all changed. Well, nobody spoke each other's language, so they all left. So the tower stopped. But now everybody can speak the same language, be it digitally, be it otherwise, sticking something in your ear and somebody being able to speak Mandarin Chinese to you, and all of a sudden you can hear what they're saying. That this is where everything is coming together for these same things. So, where do you see Trump breaking that pattern compared to where these globalists wanted it? Because, as I said, they're manoeuvring. When you say that you're putting army and troops on the borders of nations at war, ready for Russia, you're being passive aggressive enough to say we're at war. We're having rumblings of being able to tell, we're having the rumours of war. So how do you see the Trump regime fitting in with what's going on with Russia, Iran, all that now? Has it changed?
well, absolutely. Because the thing about what people don't understand, and I would love if more of these black pill sunshine patriot truthers would be understand this, is that when Obama left office in 2016, he left behind what is known as the Asian pivot, which is basically um, he had all of these countries arm up to the teeth: the Philippines, Guam, Vietnam, etc. He even told Japan that they could drop their World War II U.S. created constitution. We made their constitution after World War II, and said that they couldn't have a standing army. Well, Obama was saying, "Oh, you can get rid of that. Go ahead and arm up." And basically, the whole thing was set up to encircle China and Russia on their borders. Same thing with Ukraine, etc. And Hillary was meant to finish the job, get in there, and create World War III. Not to
Is
and
this is this a distraction with Obama being dragged in on this Russian hoax?
Oh, I should. Yes, I almost forgot to mention that. Oh my goodness, yes. Thankfully, finally, we're finally starting to get some goodies. We're finally start. Yes, the files have been released, proving that the Obama administration set everything up, to try to take down Trump. Because they did not want him in because he was not their guy. They knew what he was. Because the thing is, back then, a lot of people did fall for, the rhetoric, but there were some people like the neocons and Obama and Hillary, and they knew what he was. That he wasn't just a rich dude running for office. That he was part of this military operation to take down the New World Order, and so they wanted to get rid of him in any way possible. And that's what this Russia hoax thing was all about. And now that we've got the files released, and I've started taking a look at them, and they're really interesting. The Steele dossier and all that. showing that the Obama administration was not only culpable but also was instrumental and ultimately responsible for this event, working with Hillary Clinton through the DNC in the Southern District of New York in order to try to bring down Trump. And the ironic thing is about this whole thing is that Trump is that they say is that their claim to fame is that the Russians rigged the election, right? And that Trump was a puppet of Putin. The ironic thing about it is that they're not entirely wrong in the fact that Trump has been working with Putin and Xi Jinping this whole entire time, but not for the reasons that they say. He's been working with
Well,
them.
he did say, Taylor, that had he been president, there wouldn't be a Ukrainian war.
Well, yeah, that's just more rhetoric in order to make the Democrats look at in order to hurt the Democrats' image more.
Well, is it not just all still part of this movie? Obama's not going in. There's no cuffs on him or anything as such. These things all seem to take so much time. You hear you come across articles saying that apparently Ghislaine Maxwell's in a prison down in Florida, which is like it's not quite an open prison, but it's like a golfing club. It's not quite a prison. It's not somewhere I'd be handing toilet rolls out, Taylor. So even though she's in jail and not trafficked anybody or not trafficked kids to anybody, because there's no list or anything. So there's something wrong with this narrative because it's interwoven. It's like you have two tricksters playing on both sides, just like we have with the Labour and Conservatives. But then you get a third one who'll come and get entwined now because you've had enough of those two, haven't you? And he'll come along on his white horse and start saying, "Oh yes, I can see what's going on. There are too many people coming in illegally and this, that, and the other, and they're coming in by policy, and it's been written down for a long time." Well, but then what has happened in the past, there's objectives that must be inflicted on those nations for them to accept it. It's an age-old trick of how you integrate societies. So it's what they've done, Taylor, and we've been groomed, as you said, all the way through the 40s and 50s, and it all points back to the biblical stuff being intertwined and what their objective was, which is to create their own kingdom down here. And they believe that they can do it, or they're going for it, whether they believe it or not. But as you said, they're quite happy to make sacrificial ritual sacrifices in order to get these powers. And we get into some really dark rabbit holes, don't we, when we go deeper than this?
Well, the thing is that after a certain point, you have to look at the facts. You got to look at what's happening and what's not, and more importantly, I would say, what's not happening, and to be able to see the forest through the trees. And after a certain point, you just got to say, "Well, this is all this is real. This is the real thing. This isn't some distraction scheme meant. This isn't some Soviet Union Operation Trust nonsense." There comes a point where you have to realize that and be like, okay, well, maybe this actually does. Maybe this is the real thing. But I want to read an article that just came out talking about. Well, first of all, actually, before I do that, I want to show something about the Syria thing, and it's a short little bit of a video, and I want to show it. If hopefully the sound will play, that'd be really nice. Do you see it? Do you see it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can see that, man.
I have time. I'll play it again tonight. We played a clip yesterday of Tucker Carlson at the Turning Point event this weekend saying, look, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, that Epstein's connected to Israel. Did a whole speech on it. That's starting to.
That's important right there. Tucker Carlson admitting that. See, holding back the Epstein files did end up helping after all.
Gain traction. And you said you're probably going to see Israel continue to break ceasefires and be perhaps highlighted as being the aggressor in the region. And I have to play this clip because this broke out this morning. And I'm not going to say all of it's fake because there is additional footage to this one. But this one I'm about to show you. Oh, let me just get Mike's reaction.
شباب في عندنا قصف شباب قصف يا شباب خذونا على الهواء شباب قصف بسرعة يا شباب خذونا على اللايف
The
cars just keep on driving. You know, they're doing the rubbernecking thing. Explosion like that, nobody stops. It's the break.
Right.
What's that supposed to be? Tehran?
Damascus. So
Damascus.
apparently, Israel started lobbing missiles into Damascus today. Trump goes over there, lifts all the sanctions on Syria, starts to broker peace. And who is it? Israel that starts fighting. Now, there is more video than this. We're not going to focus the whole show on this. So I just want to be clear. I'm not saying, but this. Look, first off, you go back to the beginning of it. I can play it without the sound. There's nothing that comes in over his shoulders, right? There's no, where's the missile? The smoke comes up from the ground. Again, there's no like fireball. There's no thing that streaks across the sky. And like Mike said, now you look at this, none of the windows are blown out. The cars are just continuing to drive. There's not a leaf that's even bothered on any of those trees. And there was about, the guy just happens to be standing out there in the helmet, which makes it look all the more dramatic. Happens to be on camera. Look, this is eerily reminiscent of the fake Iranian one we saw a few weeks ago.
Everybody just keeps driving. And from that distance, the sound is going to take a split second to travel. It seems like he's reacting to the sound before the image. If you can have another look at that, it should be the other way around because light travels faster than sound.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. It's
and you just addressed what I was going to say, which was the right there in the foreground. Who goes to do a live shot in a calm, sunny city wearing a flak jacket and a helmet?
Yeah, there's no attacks going on in Damascus right now, which is why this is such a sensational story. Here comes Israel starting to attack Damascus.
Yeah, that's awful. I'll wag the dog.
So I guess.
Okay, so that should be good enough. The whole thing was, you see what I mean? It's so fucking funny.
So, a question then. They're claiming that is Israel bombing Damascus, aren't you? But it's quite obvious that there's something wrong with that. But that is a clip saying that Israel bombed, isn't it?
Well, that's the official story. They say
So
that
if
on Damascus.
so if the official story is saying that, I mean, there's definite anomalies there, mate. You can't see anything going on there. But if that's the official, that Israel is doing that, and then the Israeli-sponsored terrorists, that is now the legitimate government of Syria, is genociding Druze or persecuting Druze and Christians in Syria. What's going on?
I'm not even sure how true that is, to be honest. Because you hear the stories. There might be some.
Taylor, I'm telling you, I've dealt with some articles today of individuals whose families are being persecuted over there. They can't get the word out.
Yeah, exactly. That's like I said. Foment the discussion, foment the story. Make it look like the things are bad over there. And I said from day one that this whole Syria thing was what was wag the dog. As soon as Assad, quote unquote, was taken down, because when you had Trump, I said this when it happened, that Trump took down ISIS. ISIS has been done for years. ISIS was out of business for
Mate,
almost.
ISIS is the legitimate Syrian government right now.
Is
That
it
is
though?
what is from ISIS. The Americans and Israelis funded them um, in the what they call it, in the zone between Golan Heights. That's where they built this basis from. That's where all the initial stuff come in.
No, but what you're not understanding though what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that ISIS, which was, as you said, funded by the United States and Israel. It's really this Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. That's really what ISIS stands for. I'm recruited from criminals and hardcore maniacs from prisons in the Arab world in order to do soft power takedowns of countries like Libya and Syria and stuff after after the whole Iraq debacle. They
But
couldn't.
they're implementing Islam, fundamental Islam. That's what they're implementing there. That's why there's this persecution going on. That's Israeli sponsored, and you just said that it's actually Israel, the IDF, that's doing that, and it's
No, but let me
built.
finish though. Let me finish. And that so continuing. So what happened was when Trump got into office in 2017, he and this is in the mainstream, and this was even in mainstream media, even in the New York Times, is that Trump was defunding the so-called moderate rebels of Syria, which, as Putin put it, how can you distinguish between moderate and radical rebels?
Well, it's just words. It's just words. It's like
Yeah,
one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It just sounds better.
that is
We
true.
used to have a Ministry of War department, but they thought it sounded a bit harsh, so they changed it to the Ministry of Defence, which
Yep, that's
sounds
exactly what was
much
the
better.
same over here. We had the they had the Secretary of War, and then they changed it to Secretary of Defense, just like
That's
how
what I'm saying. The terrorists that we are talking about are the same terrorists with two different descriptions. It's the terrorists that were in between in that buffer zone. That was you. You're saying that that is the IDF. We know that it was ISIS as well. That's where all the ISIS people were going because of that soft takeover you're talking
Webby, Webby,
about.
Webby. You
What?
keep cutting me off, man. You keep cutting me off. I'm trying to get to that, but okay. Continuing that. So Trump defunded these people because America was the one funding it, particularly under the Obama administration. The State Department was funding these people, the ISIS, all that. Meanwhile, so their funding dried up. ISIS's funding dried up. Meanwhile, Iran and Russia in particular were bombing the shit out of them on the ground, and overall ISIS just disappeared. Why do you think we didn't hear from ISIS for several years, especially even before COVID? So ISIS was put out of business thanks to the combined efforts of Putin and Trump, and they saved us out of Syria. So then why is it that, so with that being said, and with ISIS being out of the news for nearly a decade up to that point, how is it that all of a sudden, with this background knowledge, how is it all of a sudden one day they just suddenly topple Assad and take over Syria out of nowhere? It doesn't make any sense unless it's all a fraud. Not to mention the fact that Assad also went to Russia as well. So that's a nice little cult to the alliance right there. When Syria was under the protection of Russia, Iran, China, etc. When so it doesn't make any sense that suddenly this would happen unless this is all wag the dog. Wag the dog meaning that it's all just a movie, it's all just play acting, and that the whole point. Now I don't understand what the main point of the whole thing is, where this is all leading to. But that's the thing about this movie, is that it has several different storylines that are converging, just like in a regular movie that you watch in the theater or whatever. There's several different minor storylines going on at the same time, and when you get to the climax, they all meet up, and it makes sense what all the buildup was for. I can't answer what all this buildup is for with Syria, But my guess, this is just a guess, is that this is basically to show the Greater Israel plan, because now that you have Syria supposedly under the control of ISIS, supposedly, and Israel being aggressive towards them after Trump told them to knock it the hell off with Iran. Now you have Israel being again thrown into the light. Their approval rating is under 50% now. The first time in history, it's unprecedented. It's usually 90%. At its best, it was. Now you have Israel, the Greater Israel plan, being exposed by people like Tucker Carlson. What's her name? The black woman, I forget her name. But you have all of these people in the blogosphere and even in the mainstream media talking about Israel being an aggressor nation and saying, what the hell are you guys doing? Trump is trying to broker peace. And now, with all of these things about the Greater Israel plan being exposed, it's my guess is what they're trying to do is further expose Israel as being not only an aggressor nation, but in my opinion, just an illegitimate state in general, just a criminal regime. So, like I said before, you can't tell the people; you have to show them. And you have to remember, this whole thing again. It's a scripted movie, and so every single big event is all scripted. We don't know where it's all going. So, I'll put it back to you.
Thanks, mate. I thought I was on the Raconteurs report for a minute.
No. I just wanted to get that out of the way because you need context for these things. You can't just look at these events in a vacuum.
Well, the context is that when you look at it from the fact that funding is coming through Israel from the US to fund and arm and train, and you're saying that the IDF has done that, then you now know who has taken over Syria. It was all through Israel and your money. So this movie that you're talking about, mate, it's hard to work out on whose side who is.
Well, like I said, ISIS's funding dried up years ago, back in 2017, 2018. And ISIS has been out of business for a long time.
Right, Taylor, you're missing my point. Who is in charge of Syria right now? I can't remember his name. That regime is ISIS, whatever it was before that, like Al Qaeda or all the other pseudonyms that they come up with. This is how they say, "Oh, look, we've done this." Oh, yeah, they have done that. But we also have to remember things like the government participating in dealing drugs in LA in the 80s through the CIA and stuff like that. With all this game is going on and whoever's in control of it. You say that Trump is different. He's doing something different to not just the globalists, but now he's doing something different. If he's funding that, he's helping take over a regime because it was that he was part of that money. We can argue that others have done worse. Oh, don't get me wrong, but Trump certainly looks like he's doing a lot of good. But are they not all playing the same hymn sheet? Is it not all the same? Because you say he's doing something different. I don't know where that fits in. Maybe I'm missing it. But he's beating up Canada, saying they should be part of America. We're getting rid of the Gulf of Mexico, all this stuff.
Trump really, or should I say the Q team, because Trump is just a figurehead at the end of the day. But they really know how to get people pissed off.
Who Fobo? Who's he? That?
I told you, the white hat military. Because as Q said, the military.
I know you said the white hats, but let's go deeper. We know that there's deeper bloodlines involved here. Where does these white hats go? So where does the Biden lot go to on your side? And you say Trump is against that because Biden was just a bit of an hooer, wasn't he? He just wanted to make money. So, and he couldn't run a bath in the end. So that Barack Obama was obviously, or his tribe, his bloodlines was in control of that government again. So they've all done the share. They've then done this with Trump. But you see photographs of them all together, these Epstein things, all this stuff comes into the mix. Is Trump allowing this stuff to go against him, or is it just to build up this pressure? But where does it fit in now with Europe going on war and rumours of wars and definite things being funneled and changed with the US playing the part in that? Because at one point, if Assad's fled to Russia, Russia was helping Syria. That regime's been taken. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of chess pieces that have been moved here, and you just keep talking about these white hats and black hats. I'm trying to just get my head around how much deeper this goes.
Well, first of all, I need to correct you on something because Biden, I've mentioned this before, Biden was a masked white hat agent. And when I say white hats, I mean the military intelligence, the American military intelligence. That's what it is. Because the military, as I said plenty of times, Q said military is the only way, and it really was. That's always been the only way to defeat the New World Order is the military. And
But we know that comes down that dark bloodline. We know that same common thing goes through all the wars, all the weapons, all that kind of stuff. Who has the power? So you say that Trump isn't part of that. He's against that. Sorry.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that Trump is a what he is a figure is a public figurehead for the military operation called the Q operation, who we refer to as the white hats because the black hats are the cabal, the deep state, etc. And so what he is that he was recruited at least in 2011, probably goes back farther than that, to be the head of this operation to take down the New World Order. And the thing is, the military, they've always, for decades, they've done their own thing in order to try to mitigate the New World Order as best as they can. But at the end of the day, they're not the policymakers. The politicians, the bankers, they're the ones who make the policy decisions. Um, and at the end of the day, they were the ones who helped get Trump into office in 2017 in order to take down the New World Order. And all you have to do is just look at the facts and look at all the things done, and it pretty much proves it. I could do a whole show about this, and I've talked about many of these things before. And back to Syria, I think that this whole so-called leader, whoever it is, I don't know his name, is not ISIS, but rather is being claimed to be ISIS by the media, and the fact that he is another white hat operative, and that this whole everything we hear of coming out of Syria these days is just wag the dog fluff, basically in order to try to make Israel look worse.
Is the military industrial complex American military?
Okay, first of all, that phrase. Okay, first of all, I hate that phrase so much, military industrial complex. Let me explain the origin of that phrase. Obviously, it came from Eisenhower.
No, just let me know who's done that. That who's running the White House? You're saying that the government there's like a coup d'etat happened in the government, aren't you?
Yeah, it is a coup, but it's not a traditional coup. It's a military intelligence coup, all done by the book, by law. Everything is done by the book.
And who's in control of that?
Well, we know that only 10 people in the whole world know everything what's going on. That's what that's what we were told. So whoever is the actual leader,
only 10 people know.
Yep, only 10 people. And that's not really surprising. Think about the deep state. When you had the people at the very top, your Rothschilds and your Rockefellers and these kind of people, only really they knew everything that was going on. And at the end, the politicians, they didn't know nothing. They were just told what to say and what to do, and they were just being paid. Same thing with your Bill Gates of the world, your Fauci's, and all these people. They were just they were just figureheads put there. They didn't know They didn't know everything. They knew some things, but not everything.
Who do you think put the Rockefellers there? Who do you think put the Rothschilds there?
Well, that goes back to the form. Well, that goes back a long ways to the founding of the Illuminati back in 1776, and even before that, you had people like you had people like Oliver Cromwell, and these. I'm not going to say Jews because honestly, that's a very misleading term. I'm going to say these Khazarian mafia people go back to they go back thousands of years, and Jesus talked about these people too, talking about their money lending ways, and said Jesus was a badass, by the way. He would he would forge a whip and smack the hell out of these people. I'm sure you know about that.
He was God, mate.
Yeah,
he was God. Have you ever heard of the Alberdandinis? I knew I'd get it wrong. Albarandinis, I think it is.
I don't know if you're pronouncing it right, but I have no idea what you're talking about because.
Well, this is what I'm saying. These are the deeper bloodlines. These are the deeper bloodlines that claim lineage of purity to Rephaim, to Nephilim. They believe that they can find a way to become man and God, like Gibberim before them, like Nimrod, like Lucifer, people who attempted to do things. Shakar, all these lineages, all these bloodlines that have been born to go against God in every form, every single form. So wherever you can rebel against God in sinning in the flesh, sinning against animals, the most detestable things, all that kind of stuff has been unleashed into this world. And people think those bloodlines that have control of all that, they can get that back. And those are the bloodlines that we're looking at. The Rothschilds are a deep embedded family, but you're not even if we know who they are in mainstream media, mate, then
not in mainstream media. The hell no. They would.
No, I heard of Rothschilds in the mainstream media, mate, in 70s and 80s.
Really, I've never heard of them in the mainstream media, or if they're mentioned, they're like.
No, yeah, but I'm older than you, mate.
Yeah, that's true. You are. That's true.
But we knew these people. I knew the names regularly. So anybody who I know who looks like they're in charge, especially when you come from a backshop pawns broker, to be in this, to lending money to countries through governments, collateral on people, bloody hell, that's a commodity to control. No wonder he said, give me control of the nation's money supply. I don't care who makes its laws. That's where they've got this control. So you're saying Trump has broken control of that Rothschild banking system. So, and you said that it's going to be backed by gold that you've taken back from them, basically.
Well, yeah. I mean, the gold was kept in the Vatican? It's definitely not in Fort Knox. That's for damn sure.
If it's in the Vatican, it's not in Trump's thingy. But Trump, it would have to be going against the Vatican because the Vatican wants all this stuff. They agree with what's going on. So when I said to you about Trump doing all this that's going to save everything, I can only see a system that's trying to be implemented to control in such a way where either they're going to give you a boom thing now, where it looks like everything's going to come to fruition. But that's why I said, what is the impact on that? Excuse me. If Trump now has all that wealth and whoever's running Trump has got that money supply and funding going through Israel to overthrow a legitimate government. That's been going on in a civil war for 11 years. That's what mainstream told us, Taylor. A civil war was going on in Syria from 2014 when they were under attack from those forces that you're saying the IDF was funding and being even. So there's some serious stuff going on here.
Well, I mean, like I said, that so-called attack was claimed by the mainstream media to be from Israel. Those of us in the know that there is no attack because Israel has been sedated. They've been put under occupation by Netanyahu. If you ask me, the real Netanyahu, actually, I'm sure, but the real Netanyahu was executed years ago. You can even tell just, I mean, first of all, from logical inference and from the fact that you can see the mask lines on his neck. That's one thing. But yeah, Israel has been placed under, the government has been placed under occupation. Their media has been placed under occupation, just like ours, in order to, push the agenda of exposing the hardcore Zionists for what they are. These Likud types for being warmongers, for being, is greater Israel people. All of this stuff is all being exposed. As far as the financial stuff, we got all of this heated debate going on in the mainstream now, going around Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell, who I've said for years now has always been a white hat. He's been a good guy the whole time. And you can tell just by the fact that, number one, Trump appointed him, and number two, Trump got rid of Yellen, whatever her name is, Yellen, the previous chairman of the Fed, and all the chairmen were Jewish, going back for decades, going back at least since like the 60s, the 70s, 60s, 50s. And so this whole thing right now is exposing the Federal Reserve Bank, because now we have people, even normies in comment sections on videos, talking about how we need to abolish the Federal Reserve, or at the very least, we need to change out Jerome Powell for somebody that's going to cut interest rates.
Okay, let's stop you there. Who is now cut Rothschild off from owning the banking system in America? Who's running that gaff now then? Or who's going to?
Well, the Rothschild. Well, for one, the Rothschilds are out of business. They're done. They were executed. All of those satanic evil bastards are gone. And as far as
is that according to Q?
Well, you don't have to be told that by Q in order to be able to figure that out. I mean, all you have to do is just look at the headlines and everything.
The headlines from where though, mate? This is what I'm saying. Anything's possible. When I watch the Pope disappear, just just completely disappear into graphics as if I was playing Tomb Raider on PlayStation in the 90s. He just disappeared before my eyes. Then anything's possible. That's what I'm saying. Where we get our information from is important. So you're relying a lot on people, and I would be very skeptical of that. Even though I see the good things that you're talking about, I would be still quite skeptical because I'm trying to find out where the line has been drawn. Because Trump says he's Christian, right? We talk about this term Christian, yet he's at the Wailing Wall with a cap on, saying he's a Christian, but then he's a Jew. So these start to contradict. Then he's on stage with Kenneth Copeland and a woman preacher who does like prosperity gospel stuff. So you've got a real combination here of non-Christianity and a government that's claiming the following Christian values. Then they're signing in what we spoke about a few weeks back, the Noahide laws, which is rabbinic laws, which would put Christianity from the Bible in idolatry, which is punishable with decapitation. So you're seeing, look at all the good that's happening, but I'm seeing, look at these dots that it's joining for the possibility of 15, 20 years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where you had an input of these massive camps being built for FEMA with these graves, these guillotines being ordered, everything being stocked up, ready to go. We don't talk about that now. Did they just stop that? These ones are what I point to, Taylor. I think you're in important times. And I think when you if you could expand your mind to look at it further, I think your analytical mind will join the dots, and how you can join those dots, I think, how you present it, and if you advertise your show, mate. I mean, you said you don't go on anything, so
I
apart
want
from that,
to. I want to, but
have you got a Facebook ban without having Facebook?
um, I I don't use Facebook, but I want to go on people's shows and advertise, but unfortunately,
Yeah, but the thing is, Taylor, the people who would see it on groups and things like that, groups that are similar minded, you get shares like that. So it's difficult to go on the odd show. I mean, people here love you in the chat room. It's difficult to get your word out there. I
it
mean,
really,
to get to it takes time to put your face out there onto the groups.
uh, you know, there comes a point where I just, you try your
Maybe
best.
maybe your mum will turn your Wi-Fi off if you go on Facebook.
Fucking Facebook. Hopefully, Facebook gets the X treatment. That'd be great. Same with YouTube. YouTube is the one I've been waiting for. Oh man, uh, but yeah, I mean, oh my god, that Wailing Wall. People love to go on and on about the Wailing Wall. Oh, he put the beanie on. Oh my god, he put the beanie on. Oh my god, he was in the room with those rabbis. Oh my god. Oh my god, it's just it, it's so frustrating seeing people complain about such relatively small stuff when you don't have stuff in context. And as I mentioned before, the whole point of these things is to satiate both the Israeli firsters as well as the evangelical Christian base, which makes up a huge portion of the no, Republican Party. And the thing is, with all of this, this was all back in like what 2017, 2018. This is like a lot of this stuff is old stuff by now. It's kind of it's kind of fallen out of relevance, really, because it served its purpose of sedating these Christian Zionists. And even a lot of these Christian Zionists, they are seeing through the facade of the Schofield.
Can I stop? Can I stop you? There's no such thing as a Christian Zionist if we define the term Christian as what the Bible talks of.
Well,
You
what I
can't. No, we've got to be specific about this. This is why people say Christianity was spread by the sword because of the Crusades. That's Catholicism. It's not Christianity. It doesn't say that in the Bible. So it's important. It's important, Taylor, when you get this information and you flippantly use a term like that. Remember what I said, what my mum told me? What words you use can get you into trouble. So the trouble is, people say, "Oh, I was brought up in Christianity. It's not for me." And you find out they're Catholic, or they're just Jehovah's Witness, or they're a Methodist that didn't have a real family who read the Bible or anything. So you have all these different things that are all Christian. At one time, anybody who was born in America would say, "Yeah, I was born in America. I'm a Christian," because they believed it was a Christian country. But that's not what the Bible says. So it's when you're using your descriptions, you've got to start separating this because, like I said, all the religions disagree with what the Bible says. That's why it's important, my friend. Let me just fit these in as we're coming up, lads, to the end of the show. We're coming up to just gone 10 to. But we're going back to how we can join all these dots. We've got immigration issues that are now being propagated, being argued about. Yours is slightly different. You're trying to kick them out after they've all been in. We're accepting them all more and more and more. We've got all the ratings of sex offences have gone up, and it's all we've got all these riots going on, and it's being fanned. So we can see these patterns that are forming.
That the country is changing. because of all the people that are coming in, and the sheer numbers of people coming in are having a massive effect. And so the country is not the same country that I grew up in, the same country that you grew up in. You know, when you and I were young, you would always have, you know, welcoming news for immigrants that would come from whichever country they came from, whether it was Italy, whether it was France, whether it was India, whether it was Jamaica, you know. But it was very much a minority, whereas now there are parts of this country where people who have come from elsewhere are in the majority.
With Jordan McSweeney. He's 29 years of age.
Says it all, doesn't it?
He actually was born in Dagenham.
Yeah, fomenting the issue. Exactly.
It says it all. And we've seen the Kalergi plan, which is now in policy, and they're implementing communism on top of it in England. A country that two of my uncles fought against socialism for has now brought it in. It came in through the back door, but it's kicked everything open now. So we've come full circle again.
Well, yeah, that's what World War I and World War II are all about.
Exactly.
So, are you guys familiar with Vladimir Lenin?
Certainly am.
Oh yeah, of course.
So Vladimir Lenin, I guess he said that a true communist would always promote atheism and combat religion. So we know that communism is definitely not for the Christians. And I always like going back to scripture. My brother Paul wrote in Ephesians 6, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." So we know, like, that this influence of communism coming in, we see why it secularized the schools, especially like in the UK and in regions of Scotland. My grandfather, John Knox, actually championed for public schools during the Reformation, because he believed that an educated Christian is a strong Christian. If you know how to read, you can read the scriptures, and that strengthens your faith. So when they started taking prayer out of schools, they started teaching the Bibles out of schools. That was a part of that move to kind of combat religion.
Yeah.
And then they replace it with the theory of evolution, which was created by Charles Darwin. And the only reason why Darwin came up with this theory is to support his staunch racist views. He was trying to prove that people of color were subhuman. So they were links in the evolutionary chain, and that was the whole source of his argument for evolution. And if you go back and read his writings, he was a staunch racist, dude. And not only that, but this guy marries his first cousin, right? So I'm supposed to take genetic and biological cues from a dude who inbred with his first cousin?
Also, he was best friends. He was with Karl Marx, and the communists loved his work. When it came out, the communists were all praising his work and saying it's like their Bible.
Because the communists need a working class. And what better working class than minorities? And that was the whole point of slavery in the United States, the continuation of segregation in the United States. That's what they look for. They look for a ruling class. Abraham Lincoln quoted best saying, "You work and toil and make bread and I'll eat it," as opposed to slavery. Because it's always the same in every form, as Abraham Lincoln said, whether it's a king trying to dominate his people and exploit them, or if it's a group of people trying to exploit another group of people for labor. It's the same thing. It's good and evil.
Well,
so
we
gotta be careful. And when we see people like raising up their Bibles and stuff, or like these politicians saying, "Oh, I'm a Christian," and stuff like that, Jesus gives us some clear advice in Matthew 7. He says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits you shall know them. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name have done many wondrous works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart me, ye that work iniquity. Therefore, whoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken them unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon the house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall thereof. And Jesus tells us, let me find it, John 8, 31, 32, Jesus says, if you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And that's where true freedom comes from. True freedom comes from Jesus Christ. It doesn't come from governments. And that's why the communist parties are so opposed to Christianity and so opposed to our Constitution, because our U.S. Constitution says our inalienable rights are given by God, not by government.
Somebody said in the chat room earlier that if you live by the Ten Commandments, you can't go wrong. The factor is we can fulfill those commandments, but Jesus did it for us. All we've got to do is believe that. When I realised there was that much lies that I'd been taught as true, and everybody said that was wrong, that would be very remiss of me to not go and read it and say, is this the only way? Because this is the way that I've been looking for since 16 years old. What happens when we die? What is this world? When you realise the amount of lies that were taught, and that is the only truth. You know, as you were saying about going out on the streets and preaching, right? The people who can do that and make those changes, it's a priceless gift. You know, the way we can come on here and articulate. You go out on the streets when Alex is on here with all the stuff that we've had going on with the attacks, the traumas in our own lives. When you realise what this world is, and you've been fighting against it whilst being in it, and then you almost become a bigger target when you actually step in and say, look, this is the only way. But, you know, it takes a stubborn person for me to walk into your house and say, look, your house is on fire, come out now. And to argue with me that it's not that warm, I think I can stay in a bit longer. And I said, this is the only way. There's a point that you won't be able to find it. Then you'll be judged. What does that mean? You know, that needs meditating on. I've meditated on loads of other things. You know, when I was doing court bundles, I was meditating. When I was doing things like doing mediumship and doing circles and walkthroughs, it was all about meditation. So I'd done my due diligence on it. Everybody said that was wrong. That's why it's so important to say, well, look, have you read it? No. Well, why don't you? What if it was only one way you could save your child? You know, people who I've known through my work who have lost children. If there's something that they could have done, they could have done it. Well, what if that is one way as when Jesus said, look, it's done. Just believe. And you mentioned it at the start, Russ, that it's the believing thing. But you've got to go and look. I hadn't. So, you know, I can't stand there and, or should I say, I won't go and stand in front of somebody and slam, because it would sound like slamming a Bible into the face. It wouldn't have worked with me. But when you reason with me, especially when you're reasoning it for yourself, going, all these dots join, all of these religions agree on some things, and these religions and establishments, financially and all, are all liars. and then you go in, well, for if you believe in this religion, you can read the KJV, but you've got to read it through this Bible written by a prophet. What, written by another bloke? Said, no, I've got basis for where I need to start. So I won't start with a religion. I've seen too many, and I understand that it's different to what the Bible says. And it's like if the truth is the truth, and there's only you saying it, just because everybody else says it's wrong, you can't go with that.
Right.
It comes into that common sense thing again.
What
So
words
I
are they
always,
looking
I
to
always
ban?
turn to the scripture with those hard questions. So
What are
we
the
have 1
words that they
Corinthians
want us to
12.
use? And in this context, there is one word which they absolutely don't want you to use, and that word is replacement. And that tells me that that's the whole purpose. Their anxieties to stop us using that word tells me that replacement is the right word, and the only word we really need to focus on. That that's what's happening to our country. Its population is being replaced. So
The people have had enough, lads.
Yep, and with the replacement of population, they're trying to replace the culture, and they're trying to replace specifically Christianity. I mean, Britain, Scotland, Ireland, these are Christian countries, have been for 1,000 years more. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of the traditions and everything over there is built upon Christian morals. So, yeah, as this comes in, that's why I always say we got to hold on to our Christian identity, our Christian heritage. That's why I always appeal to the writings of the reformers, the apostolic fathers, and then using scripture as the final authority. This is our heritage. This is who we are. For example, I'm a 11th grade grandson of Reverend John Knox. That's my heritage, my bloodline. I run through the Witherspoon line. Reverend John Witherspoon, the only clergyman to sign the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Willow Witherspoon, one of prominent Presbyterian teachers. So the Christian heritage, it is our heritage, because as far back as you can go, I'm sure you have Christian ancestors. So we have to embrace that Christian heritage, and even with the different denominations out there, the thing is, as long as they adhere to the doctrine of the Trinity, and they know that Jesus is God, the Word made flesh, then I believe that they're just as saved as any other Christian, because just like the scriptures say, whoever calls on the name of the Lord, the same shall be saved, and we are saved through faith by grace. So we have to remember that's the key of our salvation. Our key to salvation is Jesus Christ and the cross and his sacrifice. It's not so much the doctrines and theologies that we have built upon the principal doctrines of Christ. So in 1 Corinthians 12, um, I'm gonna pick it up, 1 Corinthians 12:12. For as the body is one and hath many members, and all members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jew or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear shall say, because I am not the eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where were the hearing? If the whole body were hearing, where were the smelling? But now hath God set the members, every one of them in the body, as it hath pleased him. And if they were all one member, where were the body? But now are they made members, yet but one body. They are now many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Nay, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary. And those members of the body, which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. For our comely parts have no need, but God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to the part which lacked, that they should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. And whether one member suffer, all members suffer with it, or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now ye are the body of Christ, and members in particular. And I apply this to the denominations of Christianity. We are various uh, parts of the same body. We don't have the same function and appearance, just like the hand doesn't have the same function and appearance as the ear, but we are all one body of Christ. So, for example, when all the stuff came out about the Catholic Church and the sexual abuse going on there, it wasn't just the Catholic Church that suffered from that slander. It was all Christian churches that suffered from it. And it started a cascade effect in Christianity. And so we see that when one comes under attack, all of us come under attack. And you can ask the Christians in Nigeria who are under persecution right now from the Muslims. Are the Muslims going to the church saying, hey, are you a Baptist? Are you a Lutheran? Are you a Catholic? Are you an Orthodox? Because we're going to kill you differently because you have a different Christian denomination. No, they look at us all the same. We all believe that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, and that's what they don't like. So
The thing is, that them scriptures say that his words, believe them, believe me. So why would you not just say, well, we'll all go off this then? Because it's quite authentic. Everybody knows it goes back a long, long way. Let's start from there because we've had a lot of pollution. And I think when you've got 700 religions saying that we're all Christian, yet they all disagree with each other and most disagree with the scripture, but they all agree Jesus was a decent bloke, it's not good enough for me. So I think you're right. I think there's a balance here now that has got to draw people's attention because if things go like they are doing, I mean, we seem to be saying every week, lads, that look at what's happened. We've only scratched the surface on a lot of subjects, but look at how deep we've gone. Taylor, what I'll do is if I can remember, I'll make sure I get the right bloodlines, and I'll send them to you to see if you can find a little bit more about it because you've got all the knowledge and the articulation certainly from the Rothschilds Illuminati coming up, but you need to know where that's all come from as well. And I think you know about the Jesuits a bit, but we're all that and those bloodlines play in. So um, I'll try and remember, mate.
Before we go though, I do wanna to do my thing and read one article, and because it does tie to the conversation, and I'll try to make it quick, just because I like to do that every week, at least one article. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh God, I hit my back. I feel like an old man sometimes. So aka Denny. Anyway, so let's see here. New York Times: Israel's strike destroys Catholic Church in Gaza. I'm sure you heard about that one. At least 3 people were killed and 6 others were injured when an Israeli strike hit the Holy Family Catholic Church compound in Gaza City. New York Times: Huckabee calls death of Palestinian American in West Bank terrorism. Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, demanded accountability for this criminal and terrorist act, referring to the killing last week of Saifullah Musalai, probably not pronouncing that right, in the occupied territories. In times of Israel, Huckabee threatens to declare Israel does not welcome Christians. U.S. envoy pens scathing letter to Interior Minister accusing Israel of blocking Christian groups from entering Israel and warning of reciprocal steps against Israel via visa seekers. The scriptwriters at Webby Productions continue to take it to the SLS shitty little state with this trio of concocted propaganda blasts calculated to erode the support for SLS among members of its most fanatically loyal demographic, the Schofield Bible evangelical Zionist crazies. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, or perhaps a special ops agent purporting to be the huckster, has the sort of some Southern Christian Zionist street cred to enable him to attack this SLS in a manner that the Zion zombies of Dixieland and the Heartland cannot ignore. The Times of Israel explains Pastor H's position, quote, given Huckabee's long-standing support for Israel and close ties with the current government in particular, the rhetoric in his letter represented a shocking, quick deterioration. But the issue at hand, the ability of Christian groups to tour Israel, is close to Huckabee's heart, given that he has led countless such trips as an evangelical pastor over the past half a century. End quote. This is absolutely astonishing to behold. In years past, one such as Huckster B would have applauded the raping and killing of his own wife and daughter if Zion so willed it. And in addition to the ambassador's bombs, comes word of an Israeli accidental attack upon a Catholic church. Though Catholics generally do not worship Israel like the Schofield crazies do, they too are generally sympathetic to the SLS, or at least the more modern, quote-unquote, Catholics of the Poop Frankie Red Stripe Bar. Right on cue, letter Q, the new white hat American Pope Leo issued his own condemnation of the ongoing wag the dog slaughter, quote unquote, and make believe church bombing in Gaza. Orthodox Christian patriarchs in Greece and Bulgaria have also joined the fictitious fray, as has the Russian government and Commander Trump. Perfect. A synchronized evangelical, Catholic, Orthodox attack against this shitty little state. It's time to stop the slaughter, Pope Leo. I don't even know.
Do you see that's nothing to do with Christianity? None of that is Christian. It's all people, it's all in what they're saying. Remember when Russ mentioned wolves in sheep's clothing? That's what you're reading there. None of that is Christianity. The Jews you're talking about there are the ones that believe Christ is burning in hell in excrement.
Well, yeah, those Khazarian people, yeah. But the point of what I'm saying is that this is another blow against the fake state of Israel, and that fake state. And I say fake state because obviously it's not the real Israel of the Bible. It's nothing to do with it. It wasn't even originally supposed to be called Israel. It was supposed to be called the Land of Zion or something like that. But they changed it to be more engaging and more impactful to the Christian community. Let me just finish this. Since the start of the so-called war/genocide on October 7th, 2023, 10 plus 7 equals 17. You always got to look for those 17 comms in the media, and there's so many of them. Q Post 916 from 2018 has been playing out right before our eyes, and just when it seemed that the already battered reputation of the SLS can sink no lower, comes this miraculous and well-publicized common cause from the three largest branches of splintered Christianity, at least on this issue. Coincidentally, heavy on the sarcasm, this delightful development and unfolding hand in hand with the simmering Epstein mania being out-orchestrated in preparation for the final implosion reenacted of the shitty little state and the Jewish mafia above it. From that point forward, it will be fair game on the SLS because Epstein's Island opens hell's floodgates. Why else would Whitehead Productions be scripting these events in this manner? Trust the plan. We were saving Israel for last back in 2018. All roads lead to Israel and 9/11. That's why Trump literally has 9/11 war painted on his Truth Social face. And I know it's a little hard to see, but you can see the 9 and the 11 right here on his face. This is a calm. See, you have the 9. There's 9 stars in this right here, and then you have the 9 with that right there, and then you have the 11. And then to spruce it up, you even have 9 stars in the picture. So yeah, that's a 9/11 calm right there. Just thought I'd point that little bit out. But yeah, the point is that this is another blow against Israel. This combining with the Epstein stuff, and all roads lead to the exposure of the Zionist state, which really is at the heart of all of this. At the end of the day, because you take that down, it leads to pretty much everything. Even the Schofield Bible, it has to do with this in a way, even if indirectly, because that was propped up by the same people who created Israel. Remember, Schofield was a hired hack by Bernard Baruch and the Rothschilds. So, yeah, there you
Well,
go.
you go to one of your favourites, Mandel House. You bring in all that stuff as well. All this is related, all through the Theosophical societies, all about population control, Aryan race, all that kind of stuff. It's about bloodlines. It's about purity, and you've got to see how deep it goes. You know, have you ever studied the League of Nations? Not
Yeah,
not the from Noah, but the Table of Nations. Sorry, not the League of Nations. I used to get that mixed up when I was a kid. The nations that came from Noah. Check those bloodlines and what they did, and there's manuscripts to show that Noah's grandsons was tortured by the Nephilim demons, the spirits, because they were wandering. There was a binding of those spirits. So you see how deep this goes, Taylor. You know, you've scratched the surface. Wait till you go deep, mate. Wait till you just join these dots.
all right, I'll keep that in mind. Although, I'll have to look into look into the source of this whole bloodline thing, because it might not be as it seems, as they say.
The power's in the blood, mate. The power's in the blood. There's nothing new. The vampire stuff, the demons, it's all prevalent. It's all worshipped. It's all ritual. It's all magic. It all started through social engineering. As you said, 2 world wars will do that if you set up the right kind of conditions. And they've just found us. They've groomed us all, man. Our parents were our best teachers, but we always rebel. We're taught to rebel. But at some point, what are we rebelling against? Who are we? You know, it's questionable that anybody knows who they are. What chance do you get when the people who bring you up lie to you? No matter whether they know they're doing or not. You know, you hear of kids who are kidnapped and brought up in a different world, and then 25 years later they're reunited with family. Where do they fit in? That you put yourself in that position, and there's a lot to take in. Certainly, a complex world that we find ourselves in, guys, and society is interesting at the minute, at least. I'd like to thank you both for giving up your time again to come in, especially while Alex is off relaxing, writing another book, no doubt. But he's recharging his batteries and he'll come back fresh. But thanks for stepping in, Taylor, as always, the US correspondent, and what is going on with the Q plan and where Trump is. But I hope you dig in a little bit there with those finances, Taylor, because we follow the money. It might be interesting to see, when you've found those bloodlines, just what is controlling the Trump tornado type thing. It'll be interesting, mate. And thanks, Russ, for all the intellect, all the intellectual, and all the spiritual. Have you got any prayers, any scriptures to take us out with tonight, my friend?
Yeah, I got one. Let's go with, since I'm in the book of Corinthians today, we'll go with 1 Corinthians 3, and I'll pick it up. Yeah, let's go ahead and just read the whole thing, because I love this chapter. This is one of my favorite chapters. And I, brethren, could not speak unto you unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, even as unto babes in Christ. I have fed you with milk, and not with meat, for hereunto you were not able to bear it, neither yet are ye able. For ye are yet carnal. For wherein there is among you envying and strife and divisions, are ye not carnal, and walk as men? For while one saith, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are ye not carnal? Who then is Paul, and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom ye believe, even as the Lord gave to every man? I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building, according to the grace of God which is given unto me as a wise master builder. I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he build thereon. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Christ Jesus. Now, if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stone, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide which he hath built thereon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seem to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are in vain. Therefore, let no man glory in man, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come. All are yours, and ye are Christ's, and Christ is God.
Wonderful. Amen. Thanks again, guys. Thanks to everybody in the chat room for contributing tonight. It's been good conversation, some deep subjects, and you know, it's time to forget the knee-jerk reactions. There's a lot of information that we speak about that is readily available for you to go and check yourself. Is there um, is there an importance in your life to think what your kids are going to be left with? Because we're seeing a lot of things happening and a lot of changes coming. But football starts next week, so we'll see how we go there. God willing, we'll see you all next week. Cheers,
Right on.
guys. God
Yeah.
bless.
Thank you
All
for
right,
having
God
me.
bless.
Yep. Good night. God bless.